What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Iron Culture. We are into our second to last interview series with some of the WNBF Pro champions and competitors who I had the privilege of sharing the stage with, and quite literally in this episode at WNBF Worlds 36, as I have the top two from the light heavyweight division, as well as the eventual overall world champion. I have Max Melchard and Eddie Saldana on Iron Culture today. These two guys I got to mix it up with on stage. I got close enough to them to feel the heat of the flames of the fire of their physiques, but not close enough to actually be in the top five with them. But it was a true privilege to watch their battle. And more importantly, it was a true privilege to watch their individual seasons. Arguably, these two guys probably were two of the most successful natural bodybuilders in the 2025 pro circuit. If you look at the accomplishments they had, the shows they did, who they faced, and the titles they won, and the titles they got close to winning. So it is a huge privilege to have these two champions on. And I personally, as a fan of the sport, am a fan of both of them. But not just because of their physiques, but because I think they're both excellent humans, ambassadors of the sport, and also display a lot of qualities that I think are important to the spirit of natural bodybuilding. So we're going to have a great conversation. But of course, we got to do a little bit of housekeeping, especially since I'm not joined by my host, Eric Trexler. He's allowed me to do all the natural bodybuilding stuff, and he's sneaking in comments about college football every time I don't do one of these. So this is his punishment, is that we're having full episodes, not just his first 5 minutes of banter talking about bodybuilding or powerlifting, full episodes dedicated to natural bodybuilding because he dare speak on college football on Iron Culture. But we'll give him the pass this time. But he's allowed me to conduct these interviews, and that means I got some host responsibilities. So please, if you are listening, give us a like. Give us a follow. Give us a thumbs up. If you're feeling good about the show, give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us. It helps us get out to more people, share good information, and help people learn more about the Iron game as it is. And also, hey, if you're interested in becoming a super supporter, please check out massresearchreview.com. That's how I keep the lights on in here. That's how I pay the mortgage. That's how I have an internet connection, so I can actually interview these guys, not on the street out of my cardboard box, but via the internet, via the interwebs across 3 continents, what we're doing right now. And then finally, if you're interested in any lifting gear, head over to our friends at Elite FTS. My man Dave Tate has been so generous to offer anyone who follows Iron Culture a 10% discount. Use the code MRR10 if you need to remember what are those letters for. It's Mass Research Review. So now that I'm done being a salesman and a shill and trying to maintain my lavish influencer lifestyle of sexy science communication, let's actually talk to these champs. First, I want to welcome the 2025 WNBF overall pro bodybuilding, light heavyweight, and overall world champion Eddie Saldana to Iron Culture. Thank you for your time, man.
No, thank you, Eric, for having me. Just hearing you introduce me in that way, it's starting to settle in now. It's been long enough now that it's kind of starting to sink in, but I battled a lot with it the last couple of weeks to accept that, like, that actually happened, because I didn't have those expectations going into that show or even starting the season. I really didn't. I know, like, some people like to walk around and say that, oh, no, like I saw this coming, or this is mine, or whatever it is. I never had that attitude. I was just going in there, like, whatever happens, happens. Leave it to the judges. Whoever they put me next to, I'll pose as hard as I can, and that was the result. So it's really more than I could have ever asked for. So thank you for that introduction.
Eddie, no problem, man. And I have to say, even though I was 6th in the lineup, I relate to that so much because I am still struggling to kind of accept that I was reasonably competitive in that lineup, and the physique that I displayed this year, it was more than I knew possible. And the outcome was better than I anticipated. Like I know we're competitors, and I set the goal. I did state, I want to try to place top 5 at Worlds. That would be a stretch goal for me. And ironically, I didn't even get there. I placed 6th, but I still look back and I'm like, no way, because I think part of me really felt that that was a stretch goal. And I think a lot of people who are really good at the work ethic side of the sport, regardless of how much talent they have and whether they can capitalize on it, they view themselves as maybe not quite as good as they are, or it is difficult for them to accept that. Um, and that's part of the reason maybe why they're able to focus on the work and putting in the effort and the consistency. And that's what drives them. And they don't let the external outcome distract them. And I think that attitude, it's not always good. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. It can make you feel maybe not as satisfied or appreciative, or you can have self-doubt. And I know I've experienced those things. But I think also it's a good fit for individual sport, in my opinion, because if you get too caught up in the outcomes, which are very much in the hands of the judges, subjective, who shows up, and a lot of things outside of our control, it can lead to a lot of frustration. And ultimately, when we get on stage, I mean, there was some dudes throwing some elbows on stage, but honestly, I think that probably hurts you more than helps you. The judges don't like that. All you can do is be your best, get lean, peak well. Like you said, whoever you're next to, pose as best you possibly can, and then put in, frankly, years and decades of work in the gym, and that's it. So I think you display that so well, and I think it's such a great example to see that that's the same attitude, whether you are, a first-time novice competitor, or if you happen to be, I know it's hard for you to kind of accept it, a world champion. So I think it's a great perspective.
No, definitely. Yeah. No, I agree with all those points that you made. Definitely. I think always put holding myself to such a high regard definitely has helped me get to where I am. When I started lifting when I was like a teenager, I knew then and there that if you were to fast forward 5, 10, 15 years into the future, I was still going to be doing that. I knew then and there. I was like, I'm not going to stop. You think about the people that you meet over the years in the gym or just training in general, how many of them are still lifting to this day? Not a lot of them,
Yeah.
you know? And like that's one of those things from the start. I was like, I'm never gonna stop. I'm never gonna stop doing this. So I think just that love and that pursuit of wanting to get better is what got me to where I am. I didn't even think about competing when I started. I just enjoyed the process, So I owe a lot of it to just having that really strong, like just passion for it, if you want to call it that, that love for it from the very start, just wanting to get better. And then obviously, I learned about competing and I did my first show and I was like, oh, cool. Like now I have something to kind of work toward, because as bodybuilders, we love progression. We chase progression. We like going to the gym and training because of how it makes us feel. Like you go into the gym, you feel like you're in control when you have, when you're gripping the weights. It's a great feeling. You feel powerful, and then on top of that, you get to build a physique with it. That's just like, come on, like, it doesn't get any better, So you keep going after it. So, those things paired together, I'm like, man, cool. Let's just see how far we can take this. And to be where I am now, it's like, it's crazy, man. I'm telling you, I'm like, I just didn't imagine it would end up like this.
I love to hear it. You speak to my soul, and I love to see just how much I love to see when good people do well and it surprises them, because I know it's going to motivate you to push even further. And honestly, it's super well deserved. So, no, huge welcome to the podcast. And then, not to be outdone, we have someone who had an incredible season. We've got Max Melchard on. Not only is he the vice world champion for the light heavyweight division at Worlds, but you had a string of competitions. And folks, believe it or not, this is just his second season, which is mind-boggling to me. But you won almost every damn show that exists in Europe this year. And you weren't even just restricted to the WNBF circuit. I think, if I recall correctly, you won both the classic and the bodybuilding title in a NPC Natural regional show in Austria, where you are. If I recall correctly, You won the Evo Classic, which is an independent, natural, pro bodybuilding show that actually pays out prize money. You did a great job with that, and that's a really cool, well-run show. On the WNBF side of things, you won the always top league contested WWF Germany's Valhalla title, probably the most competitive European WNBF bodybuilding show, specifically because of just how popular in your region in Germany and Austria bodybuilding is. And that always has a lot of shows, a lot of pros come out who are highly competitive, and it typically is towards the end of the season, so people are looking for that WNBF Pro qualifier. So huge congrats on winning the hammer now. I know you've got a few of those from your last season as well. I think you won the men's physique title last time. So you're one of those unique competitors who has a physique that does well in Classic, the new division we have, in WNBF, men's physique and bodybuilding, known for your conditioning. And I'm not done. You went and won the WNBF UK Supernatural show. You crushed that one. And then arguably, when we talk about top titles, world championship level international titles across the sport, we have to give a huge shout out to the shirt you're wearing, the ANBF show, which is hosted out in Austria. Man, this show probably, I haven't been there, I will say, but what I've heard is that it is probably one of the most well-produced shows that period. We're talking like, when I talked about WNBF Taiwan being up there, I think ANBF is as well. I remember there was drones flying around our client, Dirk Emmerich's head. There are hundreds of competitors who do this, and you managed to come away with the pro overall title there, which is a huge accomplishment because this is a show that is open to anybody. It's invitational meet for pros. They reach out to people all over the world and ask them to come. And then, you get displayed on the big screen behind you. It tells you which pro cards you have in which organization, which titles you won, and then you battle it out to see who the best of those pros are. So to win that title is truly like winning a world title. It is, a very impressive feat, and a big shout out to the promoters of that show for doing that for natural bodybuilding. They're setting the standard as far as high quality shows, and I really love to see what they do. So then I think the only shows you have not won had been to some pretty respectable competitors. There was the SNBF,
Mhm.
which, another great WNBF circuit show, and I think you lost to someone named Babacar. He might be like the only 3-time overall pro world champion. So I'm gonna allow you to get a pass on that. And then also you lost to this gentleman we both lost to at Worlds, Eddie Saldana. So the only two people who have beaten you this year in just your second season are overall WNBF world champions. So Max Melchard, welcome to the show, the shredded man himself. Thank you for joining us on Iron Culture.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the amazing introduction. Now it finally pays off that I did so many shows because you get to talk about me, which always is like honey on my soul. And I have to get back to your sales talk in the beginning. I now finally understand why you invited me. You wanted to have an Austrian bodybuilder speaking English in your podcast. I would try my best to fill the big man's shoes, even though if he's not on the natural side, I still consider him the big Austrian bodybuilder. I would try my best to match my dialect with the Styrian dialect and talk more like the way you are used at Austrian stock English.
Oh man.
Yeah. Um, and talking about the season, yeah. Honestly, I still can't believe how this season went, how this season played out. Because as you said, it's only my second season. I have the same approach towards the sport as you guys have, even if in a more extreme way, because I've been lifting weights for 20 years now, and I never had the drive to compete because I'm not the character who um, usually seeks the competition with other guys, because either I talk to someone and I like them and I think they are amazing, or I talk to them and I don't like them and still leave them to themselves. And therefore, I think either everyone is unique in his or her own way, and I never had to drive to battle with other people, because I think everyone has their bonuses and minuses and positive and negative aspects. So my approach to the competitive side wasn't about the competition itself back in 2022, but about the prep, because I fell in love with different kinds of sports: lifting weights, swimming, running marathons, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but always for the reason of feeling myself and feeling pain, and working through pain. And that's why I wanted to do a show, because I wanted to do a prep rather than a show itself. Because a couple of my friends always told me bodybuilding prep is the toughest thing you can do, and you can't compare it to running a marathon, and you can't compare it to anything else. So that's why I said, "Mm, maybe I should try it." Um, Up until I entered the stage the first time, which was the PCA First Timers. I don't know if you guys know the show, or the federation, the PCA. It's an untested show, but also very well managed. They have a clear structure. And I entered the stage not knowing, because I was 30 years old. I was already a dentist for a couple of years. I was, I think, engaged back then to my now wife. And up until I entered the stage, I wasn't sure. There were two possibilities. Either I entered the stage and think to myself, Max, what the hell are you doing here? You are smeared in some brown color, wearing not even your underwear. It's rather a tanga. You're a dentist for a couple of years, and what the hell are you doing? Or I would love it. And the second possibility was the case. So I entered the stage, and I fell in love with being on a stage and presenting myself. I always had, now you can tell I like to talk, even if it's not my mother tongue. I always had problems with talking on stage because I got nervous. But through bodybuilding, I found a way of presenting myself, leaving the energy I have got given, and giving it to an audience and giving it to the judges. And honestly, now I have to say I also like the battle with other competitors. It wasn't there up until in 2022, but from then on, I fell in love with comparing myself and comparing different physiques, and seeing uh, what results the work I put into myself, and the food I put into myself, and the sleep I put into myself bring on the stage, and what mom and dad's given genetics uh, produce finally. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
Max,
So
I love it.
it's been a journey already, even though it's only my second season. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think what stands out to me about you, Max, is a couple things. One is that um, you appear to be just such a positive person who loves what he does, which I think is a great thing to see, and how much that you enjoy your time on stage, I think, is apparent, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And just how much you love the training, the lifting, the process. I think that is something that I think all three of us share, which I think is great. Um, it's something that draws a lot of people to the sport, and the competitive side, the fact that you're learning to love that. I think I have two things I want to say about that. Is one, it's good if you're anchored in loving the iron and lifting weights, which you both are. You know, Eddie spoke about feeling powerful and what it's like to hold the iron and focusing on progression. And then, oh wow, it also is changing my body and what could be better. And you were talking about how you've been enjoying pushing yourself through pain for 20 years and competition has come later, I'm very confident that even though now you're starting to focus on the competitive side of it, that you'll always have a love, because sometimes younger competitors who get into competing early, they don't yet have that strong attachment to the iron yet, and they can get a little too caught up in the competitive placings and the outcomes, and it can actually take away from their underlying love of the game, which I think is a tragic thing and when we think of just how amazing the iron is. So um, that's so good to hear. And the second thing I'll say is that I'm a fan of the sport, and I think it's really interesting because pro bodybuilding at the highest level, like, you have to have a certain level of genetic aptitude and the right shape. It's like a dog and pony show. Like, if you're 7'2" and you have like really, really, small bone structure, or if you are just not built right, you just can't get there at all. But even at the highest level, because the sport is so demanding, some people just can't get shredded. Some people just don't have the size. Some people just crack up mentally and never are quite able to bring the right package to stage because they can't stay objective in the end. Some people, like you said, they have traits from their parents. Some people take different strategies with training. And I think it's really interesting as a fan of the sport to see the different pathways that people can try to get there. And then when you finally get them on stage and oh, this guy's very different from that guy, this guy's very different from that guy, I think it's really interesting to see, what happens. So I always enjoy hearing about different athletes. Like, some are just huge, but really struggle to get shredded. Some, I'm not going to call any names here, but maybe they're only 2 pounds up from stage weight and they're already struggling to eat more, and making other people who might be in the same room with them virtually a little jealous of their low body fat settling point. But maybe they don't have the same size or shape. So, like, we all bring different things to
Mm.
the table, and we all know how hard it is to get on stage at our peak. But that makes it a really interesting thing to me. I think the competitive side of it. So I really enjoy kind of going back to the lab, thinking what I can do, pushing hard, and then trying to bring something unique or improved the next time, and then seeing what everybody else do. So that possibility, that hope, and that unique variety, I really enjoy. So yeah, I think I relate to your perspective on the sport. Now, what I would love to do is hear about your guys' history, because there's a lot that has gone to you guys getting here. Eddie, you've had several seasons, and you have maintained that kind of focus on the process and wanting to be your best for a long time. Um, and Max, like you said, you have a long training history, but you're relatively new to the sport. So, Eddie, let's start with you. I'd love to hear about how you got into training, how long you've been training, and then your entrance into competitive bodybuilding, and how that led you to this moment where you actually came away as the world champion.
Yes. Okay. My first introduction to training goes back I must have been about 13 years old. There was something about being jacked, just like, like big arms, that fascinated me. My brother used to have this friend who, he had like big arms at the time. I was like 13. I just thought it looked cool. I was like, I want big arms. So I used to just walk around the house looking for anything that I could lift. I used to like go to the garage and look for things to curl. My mom used to use these like, it's like those 5-gallon buckets or however, whatever they are. I used to fill them with water and I used to just curl them. And that was kind of my introduction to like lifting. And then eventually I ended up getting some dumbbells. And when I was about 16 years old, is when I fully committed to like actually lifting. Like, okay, I'm gonna start and I'm not gonna stop, because I had taken a break before that. And that was kind of my introduction to. I didn't know what I was doing. I literally had no idea what I was doing. I was just lifting in the garage, just curling for an hour, doing lateral raises, whatever it was.
And how old are you now,
And
Eddie?
I'm 30.
So you've been training for almost 20
So
years if we count since you were 13.
well, it was 14 years. It's been 14 years since that day.
Since
It
you're
was like I still
16.
remember the day.
Yep.
It was like July 21st, 2011, something like that when I
Wow.
first started. Yeah, yeah. It was a very conscious decision. Me and my brother were like, you know what? We're gonna go to GNC. We're gonna go buy a tub of whey protein. Like, we're gonna start. From that day forward, we're still going. So that was kind of like my real start to lifting, and like from that day forward, Then I remember when I got my first actual job and I was about like 18, like out of high school. First thing I did when I got my first paycheck was I hired a coach. It's the first thing I did. And it's this guy that I was following him on Instagram at the time. This was in 2011. So like it's not like today where everybody's a coach. Everybody's a coach now. Back then, even just being into fitness wasn't even like that common on
Mhm.
Instagram. So I was following this guy. He was a T Nationals competitor, like, obviously enhanced, but I stumbled across his page and I was like, I don't care. I just want this guy to coach me. So, and it was like $100 a month. And he prepped me for my first show. And that was like, must have been like I think like 4 or 5 months that we gave ourselves to get ready for that show. And that was my first time ever, like actually competing. That there was a show going on locally here in my town, and I don't live in a big town. So for them to have a bodybuilding competition here, I remember like even though I knew nothing about competing, I was like, I have to do this show. Like, why not? I had nothing to lose. It's in 4 months. I thought that was plenty of time, and that was my first show I ever did. I was like 19 years old when I started that prep. And then I competed at 20 and I won. I actually won that show and it felt good to win, like to know that all the work that I put in actually resulted in something. Like I got the fulfillment that I was looking for out of that prep. I just wanted to know that my hard work paid off. I didn't like cheat on my diet. Well, I must have had a couple of nibbles here and there, but I tried to stay as disciplined as I could. I did my second like actual I did my following show that I did after that was in I must have gave myself an off season of about, let's see, 2015, about like 2 or 3 years. And I did a show here in Washington, the Washington State Natural, which is a show that I've done pretty much every prep since then. And I was coached for that show by Jeff Nippard at the time. He was still, doing clients and stuff and whatnot. So I won that show, and I remember that was the first time I won my WNBF Pro card, but I didn't use it. I was like, I just wanted to do this show. Like, I'm not trying to compete as a pro. I was like 23 at the time. I was like, so I won the junior class and I won the overall, but I was like, I'm not good enough to do like, like a big show. Like, I already knew what Worlds was and all that. I was already aware, but I was like, I'm not good enough to do it. So I literally did one show. I had done 2 shows by this point. I've done 2 preps and I've only done 2 shows. It wasn't until 2021 where I did my first actually like string of shows where I did that same show, the Washington State. I won it. Uh, what other shows did I
So
do?
you got your
I don't
so
remember,
you
but
got your pro card again.
yes, I did. Yeah, because if you don't use it within like they changed the rule now with WNBF where you could just pay your dues and you got to keep it. At the time, if you didn't compete, I think it was every 2 years you had to requalify. So I got it again, and I competed at so IPE Worlds was a thing. I don't think they're around anymore. I think the WNBF kind of like merged or something like that. But I did IPE Worlds that year and I got 4th place.
Uh-huh.
And I had people telling me, do Worlds, do Worlds. It's in 3 weeks. Just hold it on for 3 more weeks. And I was like, I'm not good enough. I'm just not good enough to compete at Worlds. Look at these guys. Look at me. I was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. I don't care what anybody, like nobody got into my head. And I have so many people telling me to do it. I was like, I don't feel like I'm good enough, so I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to take an off season. And I'll tell you what, when I come back, then I'll do it. And this year was the year that I came back and I did it. And, and I won. But that's kind of a like, so I've had about 4 seasons. But I haven't done like I think Max has done as many shows in one season that I did than I did in all my seasons combined. So yeah, this year I did the most shows though than I've done. I guess that I did. It was the Washington State Natural. I did an NPC show, the Muscle Mayhem and Worlds. The NPC show that I did, that was a 2-day event. So I did 2 shows.
Mhm.
Like I did one, I competed on Friday and then I competed again on Saturday. So that was a 2-day event. So I don't know if you want to count that as 2 shows, but that was something interesting, something different
And
for
correct me
sure.
if I'm wrong, they had the tested on day 1 and the untested on day 2, is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So I did the tested and that show was very spontaneous. Like I wasn't, I was like, I just signed up for it. And I was like, it's in the middle of my prep. I was like, whatever happens, happens. I don't care. I'm just going to show up. I won the natural one. And then the untested one, I won my class, but I got, I think it was like second in the overall because I asked the judges for the scorecards. So I was like, I want to see the scorecards. And it was like second in the overall. And the guy who won the overall, he was a big guy. He probably had like 70 pounds on me, It was, big guy, big guy. was like 250 on stage. So, but it's cool to like, I just wanted to be up there with somebody of that caliber. I wanted to see how I looked on stage next to somebody that big. That was kind of, it was more so for the experience to compete in an untested show. And, like I got out of that show what I was looking for. Like I was not disappointed with the result. I was satisfied. I left happy. It was a good experience. And then obviously I did the Mayhem after that, and the Mayhem was probably the most fulfilling show that I had this entire season. Is in terms of like I wanted to what I really wanted this season is I wanted to do a natural pro show with good competition where I felt like okay, I actually beat some credible names, and that's what the Muscle Mayhem was for me. So prior to that show, I didn't have a lot of like confidence to do worlds, but it was after that show, against you obviously and Berto, Sergio was there, all these other guys, and I was like, this is a good lineup. But I was like, whatever happens, happens. But that like I said, that show for me to actually leave and be like, oh shit, I actually won. It gave me the momentum that I needed and the self confidence too, because that's something that I was lacking during the prep a lot. Was like, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? I would ask myself that all the time. But regardless whether I am or I'm not, I just kept putting in the work, man. I just what else is there to do?
I love it. Yeah, I just want to point out to the listeners that this is a man who got his pro card in his 20s, said, no, I'm not good enough. Came back, got it again, placed fourth at IPE Worlds. Said, no, I'm not good enough to do WNBF Worlds. Comes back and sweeps the entire season that he did this year. I mean, I guess technically you did have one loss to a 250-pound competitor in an untested show. Did he turn pro in that show? Was that a pro qualifier?
I don't think it was a pro qualifier, or it might have been a pro qualifier. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure because I know that he didn't compete after that. I know that he started his soft season after that, so I don't really follow the NPC very closely like that. But I'm not entirely sure if it was a pro qualifier
so
or not.
You might have lost to a now IFBB pro, which like Max getting the pass for losing to Babacar and you, I'm going to give you the pass for losing to a potential IFBB pro 250-pound competitor. So let's just say you had an incredible season, and I think that that humility and focus on hard work is a huge part of why. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And you've been working with Cliff Wilson for how long now?
Yeah. That's since 2018.
That's right.
So it was right around the time when I got my WNBF Pro card. I was working with Jeff Nippert at the time, and he started to focus on other career ventures. And so he told me he wasn't going to be coaching anymore. And he referred Cliff to me, actually. He said, check out Cliff. He's somebody who I actually admire and look up to. Funny thing is that I had already emailed Cliff like 2 years before that, trying to work with him. But I was like, well, I can't afford that. This time, however, it was a little bit different. The conversation went a little bit different. Cliff took me on, and yeah, we've been working together ever since 2018. It was like March or April of 2018. So it's going on for like 7 years now.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool to see when athletes and coaches collaborate together for a long time period. They often really get to learn one another's tendencies, physique. They get a good working relationship, and one thing I can say is that you peaked really well at all the shows you did. You looked fantastic. So huge congratulations. Yeah, I feel the same way about the Mayhem. I've either attended that show, coached at that show, or competed in it as an amateur every year since 2007. I got into the overall once in 2009, early in my career. And the Washington is also a show that is very close to Team 3DMJ's heart. That's where Brad Loomis and Jeff Alberts won their pro cards. I was in the overall there in 2009 as well and got stopped by the other guys. And I got to do it with Jeff in 2019, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it goes way back. I remember when Kevin and Denise ran that show, and now Aaron Orton's doing a great job with it. But no, it's really cool. So the Pacific Northwest, there's two big shows in WNBF that have always been highly competitive, and those are them. And then for the pro side of it, absolutely, the Mayhem has had some epic battles. I still, to this day, the most impressive non-worlds competition that I've seen was actually the 2010 Muscle Mayhem, where you had 5 world champions battling it out across multiple different federations. You had Philip Ricardo Jr., Kiyoshi Moody, Cleveland Thomas, Panix Pierre, and Moji Alua, and that was your top 5 in order. And among those guys, there's probably 10 Natural Olympia titles, 3 WNBF Worlds, 3 or 4 Yorton Cups, Team Universe titles, and now an eventual pro card in Panix Pierre. So that lineup was just stunning. And then 6th, 7th were also really, really good, like after that. So now you came in there and yeah, you were battling it out with, Sam Okinola, former world 2 different feds, obviously Berto, WBF Universe, who you beat in second, and one of the best bodybuilders out of Spain, Sergio, who placed second in his weight class this year and has won the overall Spanish title. So, and then he's just a ball of muscle. So yeah, I'm glad that you finally built that confidence that I think was probably overdue, my man, based upon the physique you
Absolutely,
display.
yes.
So, but no, fantastic season. Huge congratulations. And yeah, it was incredible to watch. And it was also a huge honor to get to share that stage with you. So, no, well done.
It was great. Thank you.
Of course. Max, let's talk about you, my man. So, you've been in the game lifting, swimming, running 20 years, but competition
Yeah.
is a new thing for you. I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, what the hell is in the water over there in Germany and Austria? Because some of the bodybuilders that come out of there, especially at a young age, are just incredible.
Mm.
Some of the natural bodybuilders in Austria and Germany are so impressive. Um, I mean, each time I have done worlds, I've been faced with just also the conditioning, especially, is something that I just love to see. It seems like the conditioning standard over there, in Europe too. I got to give a big shout out to the UK. Like, very, very impressive. Like, people know that when they show up, they bring it. They need to show their best physiques and striated glutes, top to bottom. One of the motivating factors I had to try to get into the truly peaked, peeled, leanest condition I could was knowing I'm going to have to stand next to Max. Well, hopefully I get to stand next to Max. If I'm not just kept on the outside the whole time. And I did. And one of my, so I'll be honest with you, one of my proudest moments was getting to look at my pictures and hitting back to biceps and most musculars next to you. Because I did get some pretty decent looks with the top 5 and not looking soft. I was like, okay, I'm hanging with Max on conditioning. I did something right. This guy is peeled out of his mind. So I think, let's start with my first question before I just ADHD myself into talking about nothing. Tell me about the bodybuilding culture in Austria and Germany, and especially the
Mhm.
natural bodybuilding culture, because it seems like it's very, very strong, and people get into it at a young age. Like Benjamin Schuster, when I was
Mhm.
talking to him,
Mhm.
the middleweight champion from
Yeah.
2023 who won my class. Um,
Mhm.
I think he was 21 at Worlds.
Mhm.
Maybe I have it, but it couldn't have been much older than that. And he was just
Yeah, no,
looking
no, yeah.
like he was in his 30s. I was very impressed.
Mhm.
So talk to me about your bodybuilding culture over there.
Yeah, I think firstly, the thing you mentioned just at the end before you switch back to your question, I'm listening to lots of podcasts from Austria and Germany from different coaches, and the difference from the US and Canada to Europe is also discussed in the European scene, because it's imminent to them as well that in Europe there is this strange drive towards conditioning. Whereas in the US, there are many athletes who have absolutely amazing muscle bellies, absolutely amazing volume, with a little less preference on conditioning. So I think the reason why many European athletes bring their certain looks is because, Hopla, am I still here?
You are.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, I'll switch down here. My my best friend's ring light is leaving. Um, so I'm looking down on you guys now. Oh no, 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 that's not my character. Um, is that many athletes choose to do a prep with a coach. And as the European culture and also the European judges prefer conditioned looks, the coaches have specialized in producing the conditioned looks. And so the prep usually, I think, is also longer than in the US. So we don't start prep the year we do the competitions, but most coaches start prep the year before, like in summer of the year before you want to compete, and enter the prep with a pre-prep cut in order to be in a position that allows reaching the conditioning you desire. So that's the first part of the answer. And the second part, what's in our water? I think we have quite good drinking quality, but I think we don't have the long tradition in natural bodybuilding just yet. Um, so I think the talent pool, especially Germany, because Austria is such a small country, but Germany with around 100 million inhabitants, they discovered natural bodybuilding, I think, only over the last, let's say, 8 years or 7 to 8 years. And ever since then, it's growing and growing and growing. And the genetics uh, we bring and the talent we bring is only being discovered by now. So extraordinary athletes like Benjamin, for example, wouldn't have been discovered back when Eddie had his first season because natural bodybuilding simply wasn't a thing in Europe. So I think that's the reason why more and more talents are coming. The trend with younger and younger guys competing is also something I'm not too certain about. In Benjamin's case, I just saw his updates from his coach a couple days ago. I'm not sure when he will compete again, but if he competes again, he will be a bomb hitting the stages. Um, because I remember back in 2023, his off-season look. I don't want to step on his toes, but his off-season look wasn't that impressive to me. His stage look was frightening because he had uh, an immense muscle volume for his age, and not even for his age, for any age, combined with elite conditioning. And now I saw his pictures from the off season, and he already looks bombastic.
Yeah.
So I think the next time he enters the stage, yeah, um, phew, he's coming for all. Um, and yeah, so I think I've answered both for the questions, and I appreciated Benjamin's physique because I'm also a huge fan of his. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a few pockets around the world where natural bodybuilding seems to be growing a lot. Um, Asia is incredible right now, and the champions who keep coming out of the woodworks there is really impressive. Um, and we're also seeing some great champions coming out of Europe. You know, obviously Spain is always killers, so it's really cool to see, and it creates a really competitive world. And it's been since 2019 that we have had far more international entrance into the WNBF Worlds than just Americans, as it used to be for a long time. You know, I've been going to WNBF Worlds for a long time. I think the first one I attended in person was 2014 in Boston. So it's been over a decade of me seeing Worlds transform. And the last few years, it's been really cool to see. I was at 2022, 2023. I wasn't there last year, and obviously I was competing this year with you guys. And it's just great to see. And now we have our first year next year where it's actually going international. It'll be in Calgary. So yeah, big shout out, people, all federations have work to do. Natural bodybuilding is very much splintered across many organizations, and there's a lot of room for improvement. But one thing that I really do want to state is that I don't think the WNBF and the people behind it, given how few of them there are and how much responsibilities they have, are given enough credit for what they've done to develop the international side of the WNBF. Most of the U.S. federations, even that have quote unquote world championships, or even they have a few international affiliates, are truly just basically U.S. based. It's kind of like, baseball, where you got the World Series, and it's like, oh yeah, who's in the World Series? I think we got a couple Canadian teams. It's not like that. The WNBF really does have very strong international presence, and you'll see world champions from all over the place, and it gets batted around a lot, which I think is great for the health of natural bodybuilding. So anyway, I think that's really cool to see. Obviously, Max, I'm assuming that bodybuilding itself, even if it's not natural bodybuilding, is pretty popular in your region, probably because of the influence of who you were joking about sounding like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it seems like that's a rich cultural tradition. Is that accurate? Is that just a perception I have as an American who, watched his action movies growing up? But is bodybuilding understood, respected, and part of the culture there, or no?
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't
Really?
say. I think Arnold's influence. Of course, every Austrian is proud, having produced this international star. But I think Arnold's influence was rather bringing some kind of acceptance to the sport worldwide. In Austria, we are proud of the character Arnold Schwarzenegger and him being born in Austria. But the sport itself is rather being viewed as something dumb people do. So it's always because there I know many guys from the not many guys because many of them already died for different reasons, but I know a couple of guys when I entered the sport who were competing in the late 80s to mid 90s, not naturally not of course, but not naturally. And I think that firstly, Austrians have the prejudice of someone who is bringing muscles to the table, of having to be not developed in the brain aspects. And secondly, there are every now and then certain characters, either in natural or in enhanced bodybuilding, who fulfill the prejudices people have. And sometimes some of them are successful and known, and yeah, the prejudice keeps growing.
Gotcha.
So I'm still often confronted with surprised patients who simply don't get that their dentist is also having the passion of doing bodybuilding. And still, they don't know what natural bodybuilding is. So, yeah. Either
Gotcha.
they think I'm only bodybuilding when I'm lean and my shirt is not long sleeved, or they ask me if I still train because you've lost some weight, right? You've lost some weight. You've gotten thin over the last couple months. Have you stopped training? So yeah, natural bodybuilding is not something the Gen Pop knows about.
Wow.
Bodybuilding is still enhanced bodybuilding,
Got it.
and the bodybuilder is viewed as the optics a bodybuilder brings are the optics natural bodybuilder can't bring.
I see. Well, that's an
Yeah.
interesting thing because from the outside, when you see the success of a show like the ANBF or the Evo Classic, or when you see Das Gym, uh,
Hmm.
it makes it seem like from the outside that, oh, there must be a rich natural bodybuilding culture and some
Hmm.
degree of acceptance and commercial viability. But I think that speaks the fact that those three things exist and they're so successful, it speaks more to how passionate individuals can be. And if they're business savvy and truly love the game, that they can do very well. So, you know what, in many ways, it's unfortunate to hear that, of course, we're all just perceived as dumb meatheads, and if we're natural, then we're dumb meatheads who are not even big enough. So we're just stupid and small. But
But
I,
it's always good to fly under the radar
you're not wrong.
and surprise with cynic and intelligent comments.
No, I fully agree. I do like subverting
Mm,
expectations. That's for sure.
mm,
But no, I guess a huge shout out to everyone over there who, like yourself, is doing the good work, promoting and being a good ambassador for the sport. And man, considering what you just told me, the fact that the ANBF is doing so well, the WNBF Valhalla is doing so well, the Evo Classic is doing so well, and that if anyone hasn't been out to Austria and gone to Das Gym, I have not been there yet. But seeing the pictures and the videos, it seems like a true mecca to the love of Iron Game and also Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, you know, they got like a literal Terminator
mm.
there, and like you can stay there like it's a hotel, and you can train. They have every piece of equipment you could ever imagine. The guys who own it,
Mhm.
you know, brothers, powerlifter, bodybuilder, you know, so it's just very cool.
So the four names you just mentioned, so the WMBF Germany, the Evo Classics, or the whole corporation Evo per se, the AMBF, and in Austria, the AMBF and Das Gym are the four names that drive the sport forward in the German-speaking area. So especially in Austria, I have to say that the corporation of ANBF as a competition and Das Gym as an institution or gym or however you want to name museum is the one single thing that made natural bodybuilding explode in Austria. I think it was back, they opened up in 2016, I think. And there was this intertwining of owner, one of the first popular natural bodybuilding coaches in Austria. Shout out to Valentin Tamposi. Um, and athletes who were working out in the gym. And they made a season together, I think in 2018 and 2019. And that's what put natural bodybuilding really on the radar in Austria and helped it grow. Yeah.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
And you have to visit. Both of you have to visit at least Das Gym. Yeah,
I would love to.
I think, yeah, I think
Yeah, that would be beautiful.
it's worth the trip. You have people changing their life and moving to Vienna from all over the world with the only reason of working out at dusk, which is beyond my grasp. But there are people who are moving from their old lives just in order to work out at Das Gym.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, dude, I know I know competitive bodybuilders who lived in LA and Vegas who went to Das Gym and said doesn't even compare, hands down, best gym in the world. Like, like without any qualification, you know. And then if you actually anybody just go online, you've got to check it out. The videos and the pictures alone are probably enough to convince you. But it is truly, it seems like a mecca of bodybuilding. So that's really cool. Um, I want to give people a little more insight into your personal lives. Before we started recording, Max, we got to meet your daughter, your wife, Eddie. You mentioned that you started training with your brother. So talk to me a little bit about, to the degree that you're comfortable, Eddie, what does life outside of bodybuilding look like for you?
So I have a full-time job, and apart from that, I my wife and I, we run a meal prep business here, or mostly we actually just started it this year, but
Congratulations.
it's more local based, but it's we're also we have like kiosk locations in gyms throughout town where we go in there, we set up like a self-serve kind of like grab and go system. You just grab it, you scan it there, you pay for it. We have that kind of like in different gyms throughout town. So like even right now, my wife is we have like our own we have a commercial space that we rent out, like a brick and mortar, kind of use it as like a production hub. She's there right now, actually. They're prepping meals. So like once I get done with this podcast, I'll eat a meal. I'll probably go over there and help him out, And then, as I said, I do have a full-time job. I work in sales, and we sell like food products, a lot of like energy drinks,
Mm.
beverages, things like that. So that's what I do. And then it's just I don't have any kids, not yet. That's something that my wife and I are. That's something that we talk about being next for us, especially me being I'm 30 years old. My wife is my wife is 26. She's about to turn 27. I think we're at that point now where we see that as the next, step in our journey, whatever you want to call it. But I do want to be a dad, so I do think about that. I do think about things like that, and it starts to like I even think about like, well, if I want to prep again and this time around, but I also want to be a dad. It does kind of put you into a position where you start to think about your future and the choices that you make, and it's I do think everything is it's like it's doable that we can mitigate it, but obviously it isn't until you're actually in that position that you start to see like, okay, how is this gonna change the course of everything? Like it's all situational.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And you mentioned my brother. Yeah, my brother, him and I, we started lifting together. He was like, he used to pay my gym membership when I first started going to the gym. Uh, to this day, like I said, he's still training, also training. He got his WNBF Pro card this year, actually, a local show here in Washington. He's always kind of, he hasn't competed as much as I have. But he tells me all the time, like, oh, you inspire me, you motivate me. It's cool, it's cool to hear that from your older brother, that he tells me that he looks up to me. He likes to tell people like, oh, my brother won worlds, things like that. So it does feel good to have that. And then I skip right over this, but my wife also, she's also competed with me before. This year, we tried doing our prep together. It just with the business, it was just too much to handle. She couldn't focus on both at the same time. So we did the Washington State Natural together, but after that, she ended her. I actually had to tell her like, hey, step back, because she wanted to keep prepping, but I knew that she wasn't going to come in at her best. But she also earned her a WNBA pro card, I believe, in 2021. We did a show together, the Washington State no, that wasn't the Washington. It was a different show. We both did it. It was a WNBF Pro qualifier, and we both won our overalls and got our pro card. So that was a pretty cool experience to have that with my wife. To kind of have somebody that understands the life and the requirements and the sacrifices, because it's hard to man, everything that goes into bodybuilding. I mean, at least for me, it's always been very like challenging to kind of balance everything out. Because when I get into a prep, I get I get very invested in it, extremely like tunnel vision focused. And, I look at somebody like Max, and he's like, it seems like he's having the time of his life. And I'm like, man, why can't I be, why can't I be in the same spirits while I'm in prep? It's just, it's always been hard for me to be in a prep, especially like near like the tail end of a prep when like your food is low. And, like I want to be like the same old version of myself that I normally am, but it's so hard for me to find that when I'm like tired, I'm hungry. But obviously having a partner who understands, like has been through it and can be there, support me and encourage me even is, you know, I feel very blessed.
Eddie, I really appreciate that perspective. And I think it also goes to show that even when you see someone who has done multiple seasons, been competing for, several years, and even is at the top of the sport, that they're still striving to improve not just their physique, but also their approach. The goal of mine, I've done 07, 09, 2011, 2019, 2023, and now 2025. I'm not sure I've done as many shows as Max. He managed to do like 13 in one season, but I've done
Yeah.
now probably more seasons than Max. So I'll at least give myself that, and 20 shows. Um, I've obviously been trying to become better and improve, and I've done that from a competitive standpoint. But the biggest focus I've had is trying to make the lifestyle of competitive bodybuilding become more and more integrated, and so that I don't have a impact on the people around me, or at least I can minimize it. And I can tell you that is something that even with intention and focus and doing everything right, or as right as I can at the time I'm doing it to my best of my knowledge, it takes time. And I'm 42, and I just did, like I said, my 20th show in my 6th season. And my proudest moment was not placing 6th at the world. Don't get me wrong, that was huge, and I'm very proud of it. But was sitting down with a couple of my clients and friends after the Taiwan show with my wife at a sushi restaurant. I'm still on my diet. I got Mayhem coming up in 5 weeks. And one of my clients and friends, and also a WNBF Pro, asks Barb, my wife, who's traveling with me, so how do you deal with his irritability and his low energy, and how is he during prep? And she said, to be honest, it used to be pretty rough, but um, I can't even tell the difference this year. Sometimes I notice that when we walk to breakfast, I look and he's behind me because he's walking so slow. but that's about it. He gets a little brain fog, but he's fine. And I didn't say a word. I wasn't going to speak for her. I wasn't going to interject. And Barb doesn't pull punches. My wife tells it how it is. She's honest. Someone asked her questions, asked and answered. And so when she said that, I almost started crying at the table. I had to kind of just keep it together because that was something that I've been trying to achieve for decades. Um, so it takes time, man. And you definitely will get there. And the fact that you think about it is a really important thing, because a lot of competitors don't. They just expect the world to change for them. They expect their partner to cook for them. They expect everyone to feel guilty if they order pizza, and they forget that we're choosing to do this crazy thing. So I think that's just for everyone listening. Just know there's always something to try to strive to improve for, even if it's not your physique on stage, and even world champions. So, and I think that speaks to your
Yeah.
character.
No, absolutely. I'm self-aware enough to know how I act during prep. Like if I'm being very irritable, I'm aware.
Yeah.
I would bring it up a lot, and I would tell my wife like, "Hey, if I acted like an asshole today, I'm sorry." You know how it is, and she was very understanding. She was like, she got to a point where she would just ignore me if I was being like a prick. She would just ignore me. She wouldn't like cause any conflict, or she was just like, if I was just acting a certain way where I was very like my tolerance for things in prep is just like in the gutter. Like I'm just, like I said, I get very irritable. She knew she would just ignore me. She would just that would be her way of dealing with it. Like, okay, I'm just not going to say anything. Like I know what's going on here, and we, like I said, man, we got through it really well. She's, like I said, very understanding, supportive, and even like it's funny that you were saying like, well, like near the end of prep, it's funny because when I started to get like really rough, probably like 3, 4 weeks out, I was actually doing more for myself than she was doing for me, like prior to that. Meaning like my wife, she's like if you want to use the word traditional, she like will help me prep my meals and stuff like that. But I started kind of taking those things on myself,
Uh,
like near the end, because I felt it was weird. It was almost to the point where I started to feel guilty of like how much she was helping me.
right.
So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna step in and I'm gonna start trying to prep like my meals. Like peak week, I would prep all my peak week meals because those are like the portions are very strategized, like the olive oil and all that. So I started prepping those myself just because man, I was getting just so much help from her that I was like, you know what, let me try to step in and do some things for myself now. And it's weird because you would think that at that point of a prep when you're feeling the worst, you don't want to do anything for yourself if you don't have to. But I don't know, it was just something in me that I felt like I had to take on that responsibility, at least to a certain degree.
Mhm.
So
I think
kind of helps out.
no, it's understandable, and that self-awareness is so critical. It's such an important thing in life, and of course in bodybuilding, and it speaks to your character. So, another thing I wanted to state is I think it's so cool that you're able to have a healthy relationship with your brother who's also competing, and your older brother looks up to you in that way. There's a lot of sibling relationships that wouldn't be like that. The rivalry between brothers is too strong, or they wouldn't be able to give props to their younger brother. So that's super cool. And yeah, I think last question for you, Eddie, before I ask Max and we start to close this out, and I respect your guys' time and let him get to his family, is you just won a world title. So we running it back? Is it an off season? It's a tough thing when you're this successful to decide, well, what's next? So I would love to hear what are your competitive plans?
Man, well, I'm definitely going to be taking an off season. I will not be competing in 2026. So just clear that out of the way. When I was in my prep, I want to say maybe like at the when I started to get lean and I could start to see like the improvements in my physique. I was already thinking about the off season. I was already thinking about what I'm going to bring up, what I'm going to work on, what like how I'm going to structure my training, what I'm going to focus on. When I was like 4 weeks out, I was already training like the off season had started. I
Uh-huh.
was already doing extra sets of like lateral raises. I was already hitting the muscle groups that I thought were lacking, like if I was in the off season. So I was from even before the season closed out, I was already thinking about the off season. Now, as far as the plans moving forward, gonna since the show ended, since the season ended, I just kind of been going to the gym, letting the body recover, having fun with training, feeling good. And then I will get with Cliff. We'll put together a structured plan for the off season, and this can be like the next, like what we're going to focus on the next, like 6 months, 8 months, whatever the next year, what we're going to bring up. Probably do spend maybe like 2 years, kind of like going through the bulking and cutting cycles, building on lacking body parts, and then start a prep again, compete again in 2028 is what we're thinking. I think that's pretty good. I think 2 years of off season and then giving myself about a year to get ready for the stage. Sort of like how Max was saying earlier, like you pick out your shows like probably like a year and a half in advance, which I think is it's actually a good amount of time. Like if I'm gonna compete at Worlds in 2028, we're thinking about that now. We're not thinking about that, late 2027. No, we're thinking about that now. Like, okay, I'm gonna compete at this show on this date. So this is how we're going to structure the next 2.5 years. And we kind of go through that from the start. So that's kind of where me and Cliff are at, as far as structuring the off season and when we're going to compete again. That's the goal. I would love to come back and do worlds. Maybe jump it. I mean, I really can't predict the future, but I've always thought it would be really cool to uh, do like a Yorton Cup or something too. I don't know if that conflicts with anything like any regulations with the WNBF. I don't think that it
It
does,
does
but
not.
it yeah, it would be cool to try something like that. I guess it's just a matter of having a physique so good that it's undeniable, where it wouldn't be a conflict of interest. So that's kind of the goal. Just continue improving, come back better, and see what happens.
Yeah, just for the record, there is no conflict. I'm on the volunteer committee to improve judging standards, conflicts of interest, professionalism, and transparency in judging with the WNBF. And one of the things I'm really happy to see was how they got rid of any of the cross competition rules. Obviously Babakar, he came back after competing in the IFBB, and that was no longer an issue after initially was. You've got multiple competitors who did very well at Worlds who also did very well at other world championships this year. Natalie Hayes did the Orton Cup, Natural Olympia, NPC shows, and she won the overall world title. And so, no, that's something I've been pleased to see. Obviously, we talked about Max doing, ANBF and a few other unaffiliated shows, and he did quite well on the WNBF circuit as well. So that's I think it's a really positive thing that needs to be maintained in natural bodybuilding. And the actuality of not having that kind of conflict of interest, and also the perception. Because sometimes you hear, oh, but I heard they don't like that. And I think one thing that I really do like about the WNBF, and one of the reasons why I support it, is there was like 10 judges at Worlds being rotated in and out from all over the international federations of all 60. So there's very few decisions I disagreed with in terms of the WBF World placings, and I think they do a pretty good objective job because almost all of those judges compete. And there's one thing that I think all competitors really hate to see is when politics gets involved in our sport, because it makes it feel like what we do is not real. It makes it feel like our pro status doesn't mean anything, that it's all just decided in back
Yeah.
rooms. And I think nothing demotivates and depresses me more when I hear stories of misconduct in terms of the actual competition and bodybuilding. Makes me like, well, what's the point? So that's probably honestly the biggest reason why I and do what I do, and I support like the WBF. It's for that because I feel very good about
Yeah,
it. So
it's
anyway,
great. No, it's
yeah.
great. It's good.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting, man. When you come back with your focus in the off season, my man's doing extra lateral raises 4 weeks out because he's trying to improve. Uh, I can't wait to see it because I think we were all really disappointed that Babacar wasn't able to compete this year. And that would have been an epic battle. And I honestly don't know how it would have gone because the package you brought was truly impressive. So, yeah, I'm excited to see there's a lot of names out there who are building things, and when they come together, we talked about Benjamin Schuster doing ridiculous things. We talked about your plans to come back in a couple years. We're going to have one of these years where just the stars align and all these incredible natural bodybuilders on stage together. And I'm not even going to want to be on stage. I'm like, I'm not doing this season. I want to watch, because that was one of the downsides to being on stage with you guys and what I thought was arguably one of the most competitive of the pro bodybuilding divisions. I didn't get to see it. We also had, Andy Chappelle on stage with us. We had a bunch of other really, really impressive athletes, and it was an honor to share the stage, but part of me as a fan wanted to watch it. So, Eddie, thank you so much. I wish you the best. I think your attitude, your humility, your work ethic are things to aspire to and inspire others. And I love that you are working on not just building your physique, but also your self-awareness and trying to take more out of the sport than just getting huge and jacked. So thank you for what you do. And you're a great ambassador. I'm so glad you hold the world title.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me as well. And it's always a great chat. And I always take something from it. I always like to learn, hear from somebody who's already walked in my footsteps or kind of already done what we're all doing at the end of the day. That's whether it's competing or whatever it is. It's always great to sit down and chat it up with you guys and learn something and take something from it. So thank you as well.
No, it's an honor. You're very welcome. Max, you mentioned, I met them off camera. You've got a wife, you've got a daughter, and relatively young, early days with the family, which is awesome. You are technically Dr. Melchard as a dentist. You work in a clinic. You've only been competing 2 years. Talk to me a little bit about your life outside of bodybuilding, and then what does the future hold for you? What are your competitive plans?
First thing I have to direct to Eddie or towards Eddie. Um, Becoming a father is a challenge in a prep, but I think it's also a challenge. I didn't become a father in prep, but having a little child back home is a challenge. But I think it's the same thing as every other thing you can name in a prep. I think it's all about your perspective. I entered the prep back in 2022, and I said to myself, I'm in the luxurious position of being possible to actively choose to eat less than my body needs, to compete on a stage and present myself. And that's important in this phase, but the most important things are my work, because the work is actually the thing that's putting food on the table. And on first place, always family. And with having my daughter now in my second prep, I even put family on a higher podest. And I told myself, if anything I do affects either my wife or especially my daughter, I would stop prepping, because competitions fade. The experiences also they could become even more glorious in your memory, but they also fade. And even titles, no one remembers, or maybe our scene remembers, who was world champion of the WNBF. But yeah, it's our small bubble, and we appreciate it and should be appreciated. But the thing that stays is your family, hopefully. So I entered prep with the intention, if anything I do would affect the joy my daughter has in the first years of her life, I would stop and cancel my prep. And that way, I found the immense benefit of having a small child and a wife back home, because your wife is not limited by certain structures in life, and wives can be spontaneous, and wife can have spontaneous ideas, which is absolutely something you, or at least I don't like in a prep, spontaneous ideas. Um, but small children don't. They have their certain structures. Every day has the same structure. And I managed in this prep to build my prep around my daughter's daily structures. And it made my prep way easier, because back in 2022, there was always the fact of, why can't we go into the city center to sit in the setting sun, and I'll have a cocktail and you drink your Diet Coke and water with lemon. And I told my wife, because I'm too tired, or I don't want to, I already reached my step goal, I don't want to insert extra steps. And now in this prep with the small child, certain structure. We wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We have our breakfast at 6:30 a.m. And then in the evening, at this time, the evening routine starts. And we found a perfect way to handle it. Um, but I think my wife would say the same thing your wife said, Eric, that especially in this prep, I was even easier to handle than in my last prep. But internally, after the 2 weeks of not really looking what I'm eating, and already feeling more vital, um, it's still different, because I did all the things a father wants to do, a father is expected to do, and a father is doing. Um, I, but still, the feeling I have inside now is different. I did the things I did. I also appreciated the things I did. But now I'm back into really enjoying the things I'm doing, because especially in the final phases of the prep, everything gets way too structurized, um, and even the daily routine, even if it's the same now, um, is like, check, I did the breakfast, check, we woke up, check, we changed the diapers, check, we made our evening structure. But now with enough macros or enough calories to be in a surplus, I check the boxes as well. Except today, because today I managed to skip the evening tradition, but I enjoy them way more. So that's a different. I think having a child and prepping depends on the way you manage to really direct yourself into not being an. I'm not sure if I'm
You
allowed
could
to
say asshole.
curse. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you really have to tell
Yeah.
yourself, family first. A wife is important, and we all love our wives. But having a child is like you said. It's the way I see it. Having our child was maybe in our relationship. It was our next step. But in the way I see life, having a child was not a step on a stairway. It's like a rupture of the way you were life perceiving beforehand, and it's like not a new chapter. You write the second part of your book, having a child, because it's not changing this or that. It's literally changing everything. Sometimes most times in a positive way, but also you have to dial yourself down, and I think that's something especially solo sportsmen or sportswomen actively have to work on, because we are doing a really ego-centered sport, and being parents is truly something where being ego-centered should not be on the table. So yeah, that's my my views on becoming a father, and I think you would be an exceptionally good father. So go for it. The process is joy.
No,
So,
thanks, Max. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate the wisdom. You obviously having gone through something here that I haven't gone through. I like to always hear insight from others, especially, being a bodybuilder, you have a career and you're able to manage all these things. I respect that. I think it's very commendable. I think it looks like, you have a beautiful family, and it seems that you do a really good job of, like you said, structuring it in a way that you're able to just, you know, you know, you're not being so selfish about it. If
mm,
that's the way I'm trying to, yeah. So
yeah,
I really,
yeah,
like I said, I respect that. Thank you for sharing your insight on that.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing beforehand. Like you said, you're already planning for 2028. I think the best thing you can do is actively telling yourself what's truly important in life, and that's in at least in my case, it's not the luxurious passion I chose to love, but it's the people that surround me and the people I have in my life. So they are always on the first place, and bodybuilding. Yeah, I'm happy that they accept it the way. I'm happy that they are some kind of intertwined in the journey I've chosen. Um, and I think they are also fans of myself, which makes me truly proud. Um, but yeah, I think it's a luxurious passion we have. And I'm in a luxurious position that my business is absolutely not dependent on the way I perform or if I even have a stage presence. So it's truly uh, passion. Yeah, I simply love the sport, and I'm super happy that in my late days, being 33, yeah, I'm not the youngest athlete anymore. But I'm super glad that I found this passion being 30 years old. Because as I said before, I did so many sports and I love the sports, but I never found joy in competing. And now having found this passion, um, I honestly have to say that also loving the competitive aspect of the sport is feels like a cherry on top. It added something to my passion for being active, for my passion to not only try and train my psyche but also my physique. Um, Having this extra of competing and loving the process of competing and enjoying shows and enjoying as we were talking about family, I entered the sport with my father,
That's
Mhm.
right.
and he turned 66 this September, and he took the coaching side of like the on-hand coaching or at the Worlds. So my father did my color. My father helped me with the pump up in the restricted areas. He was allowed to help me with my pump up. So yeah, it was amazing, it's also the the memory we now have together is uh, super special.
It's
Um,
beautiful.
because yeah, we've been training together for 20 years now, ever since he introduced me to the sport, and now 20 years later, he's standing in our Airbnb on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and coloring his son with a paint roller. Um, or like coloring his almost 34-year-old son, being 66 years himself, with a paint roller in an Airbnb. First time in the US for him. Yeah, something we both, I think, never will forget. So, yeah,
That's a beautiful thing,
I
Max.
drifted off. I
That's
drifted
awesome.
off, but yeah, yeah.
No,
I think
it's a great place to
the
drift
main
to.
point is that I'm passionate. Yeah, that I'm passionate about the sport, and I think my passion is also pulling my family into understanding why I keep doing what I'm doing, and they all accept it.
I love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a family affair. You're keeping what's important at the top of the list, and it sounds like you're making it so that everyone's benefiting from what you're doing rather than it detracting, and that's what it should be. So for you, my man, what does the future hold? Are we taking an off season? Are you getting back on stage, or what's going on for the future for Max the bodybuilder?
Yeah, I'm definitely taking an off season. Even though I'm in a really strange situation of not feeling super exhausted. I'm glad that I'm not a really young competitor, because I would there would be the possibility of making the unwise choice of immediately dieting again in a couple of months. Um, but there are two factors. Like, first factor, as we mentioned before, is my family.
Mhm.
So the next couple years will be more family focused and more um, on collecting memories together, besides bodybuilding. And secondly, I'm far enough down the road in life that I know that development takes time,
Yes.
and rushing things never or seldom turn out to be a wise choice. So I will definitely take an off season. I'm not too sure about when I will compete again. It's also either 2027 or 2028, but I think it will also be 2028. Now that I know that Eddie is competing 2028, there's almost no question that it will be 2028. Um, no, but I think these 3 year time spans are a wise choice, because they are it's close enough to not really lose the focus, and it's far enough in the future to actually have the possibility to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can improve the way I did within the last 3 years, because I made the newbie gains of someone who's coming from all different kinds of sports, now focusing on bodybuilding. But still, I think in 3 years' time, it's a good time spent to actually improve, and appreciate the journey, appreciate being able to do it again. And yeah, so I'll probably be back in 2028 as well.
Awesome.
There you go.
No, it's exciting stuff, gentlemen, and I may be there with you. I have an open-ended off season where earliest they'll get on stage is 2027 and potentially 2028, depending upon how well things go. So who knows? We may get to all run back. But I just want to say a big thank you to you both for sharing who you are as bodybuilders, and insight into your life, a look back at your competitive season, and most importantly, sharing your values with us, because I think that's something that sometimes top level competitors don't get to focus on, at least externally. People all want to know, like, what do you do in the gym? What do you do with your diet? How did you get so big, et cetera, et cetera. But I think one thing that people shouldn't forget is that to get to your level takes, like you guys have talked about, more than a decade of hard training, of consistency. And you're only going to have that if you have your values and your the important things in life, as Max said, are in place. So I just want to offer, on behalf of the whole cult, congratulations to both of you on a hugely successful season. Best of luck in your coming off seasons and all your personal endeavors. And to all the listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of Iron Culture. We've got one more of these coming up, where I'll be speaking with the one of the division winners in the Classic Physique new Pro WNBF Classic Physique division, who I had the pleasure of competing with twice at WNBF Worlds, as well as the Mayhem. And after that, we'll be getting back to our regularly scheduled programming, a little more science heavy. It'll be the two Erics talking. And again, please do support the show by giving us a like, giving us a subscribe, giving us a 5-star rating, heading over to Mass Research Review if you want to nerd out with us every month and really support the show and keep me off the streets. And then finally, If you need straps, lifting equipment, bands, all the good stuff, head over to Elite FTS and use the code MRR10 and you can get that 10% discount. And I will see you all next Monday on the next episode of Iron Culture.